and I'm your favorite magic channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck text. I come correct like a porn star, slicing up all these other suckers with my sword Mars.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG. We got decks and stuff like that. For example, here's one right here. This is budget Stompy. It'll only cost you about 15 bucks. Low prices on TCG Player. And this is a deck that I've been in love with since like 1998. But it's intermittently good in standard. Is it good in this standard? Let's give it a shot. 26 creatures in our Stompy deck. It's pretty important for a Stompy deck to have creatures in any aggressive deck. And, you know, a mechanic we have in this format that's really good, I think, for beatdown decks is landfall. You know, like traditionally, Stompy decks, aggressive decks, don't want to draw lands in the mid and late game, but landfall helps mitigate that pain quite a bit. You know, we're playing 12 landfall creatures in all in this deck. We're going to play 4 copies of Scythe Leopard, 4 copies of Snapping Gnarlid, and then 4 copies of Undergrowth Champion. He was all the money in the deck. He's like $240, $250 on TCG Player right now. He's the thing that makes the deck $15 and not $10. But really, really good creature in the format. I think the only thing that's stopping him from being, you know, mainstream playable is probably Silk Wrap in this format. And it sucks when he gets Silk Wrap, but it's one of the only things that stops him. He's a beast in combat, really, really hard to remove. And once he starts, you know, once you start getting the ball rolling on him, he gets 3 or 4 counters, he gets nearly impossible to deal with, you know, outside of spot removal like Ruinous Path or Silk Wrap, you know. So very, very good creature. The only 3-drop we're playing in the deck. Snapping Gnarlid, scale it back 1, right? Snapping Gnarlid is an insanely good creature, honestly. If I had to play any budget green 2-drop, it might be Snapping Gnarlid. Very, very easy to make this guy a 3-powered dude. And a 3 toughness dude, by the way. And we've got a couple of different ways of getting, you know, multiple landfall triggers in one turn in this deck. So Snapping Gnarlid is an all-star creature and probably the best, maybe the best 2-drop we play. And then scale it back 1 more for Scythe Leopard. You know, we don't have too many great green 1-drops in this format. Again, if I was forced to play any aggressive green 1-drop, it would probably be Scythe Leopard. I looked at Honored Hierarch, but he's terrible. And I looked at a couple of other things. Everything's bad. You know, Servant of the Scale is not great without Hardened Scales. And Hardened Scales puts the deck out of budget. And Hardened Scales, it's just too similar to some things I've already done. You know, I could have used like Avatar the Resolute, Hardened Scales, Servant of the Scale, but I feel like I've already done something very similar to that, and I want to do something fresh and use landfall and all that. So I just don't think we have too many great green 1-drops, but Scythe Leopard is definitely the closest thing we have. And by the way, if we get an Oath of the Gladewatcher, a really good green 1-drop, I think that could push a deck like Stompy over the edge. I think it's just waiting to be a very good deck, especially like the red-green landfall deck. I think it's waiting to be a really good deck, and it really requires a good 1-drop for that to happen. So here's hoping, but for now, Scythe Leopard is a very good card. I'm playing 4 copies of Heir of the Wilds, who is super easy to make a 3-power guy in this deck. This is the other no-brainer 2-drop in mono green, you know. Switches from defense to offense very, very easily, and we need that little bit of versatility, you know. But this guy can be a 3-power guy very easily by like the 3rd or 4th turn every single game. So I'm playing the hell out of him. I think he's definitely one of the most no-brainer 2-drops we could play in this deck. 4 copies of Temur Charger in the deck, which looks weird, but this is a guaranteed 3-power 2-drop, which is awesome. And if you drop him on a morph, that morph up ability is actually better than it looks. We're playing a fair amount, 10 in all, buffs in the deck, you know, spells that increase creatures' power. So being able to give a creature trample is actually pretty darn relevant. And he costs 0 mana to flip up, which is pretty awesome too, you know. He's like a combat trick that doesn't cost you anything, and that is very relevant, especially when you're getting a 3-power guy out of the deal. I love that he's a 2-mana, 3-power dude that has a more relevant upside on the flip than it looks like he has. That has come in handy many, many times. Here's the thing. We have an open 4-of slot at 2-drop. So what do we do with it? There's a couple of things we could do. We could play Elvish Visionary, but he's a little small, doesn't play well with, you know, certain mechanics that we're using in the deck. But he does cycle through cards very well, which a Stompy deck likes. Undercity Troll we could play, but I feel like his regeneration is a mana too high, and Renown is a little harder to get than it looks, which kind of sucks. And then Timberpack Wolves I looked into as well, but you gotta have at least 2 of them out on the board for it to be any good. Other than that, it's just a vanilla bear. So it was good when I had 2 out, and there was a situation in testing I had 3, that was fine, but just not a great card, you know. So what did we end up in this 2-drop slot, in this budget deck with? Don't click away, don't dislike just yet, let me explain myself. We got 4 copies of Gladewatcher, the only natural 3/3 for 2 mana that we can actually play, you know? So that's pretty good right there. Now, here's the thing. Formidable plays very well with landfall. You know, if we have, say, a Leopard and a Snapping Gnarlid out and a Gladewatcher, we drop one land, we've just fulfilled Formidable right there. Now, this thing, just like Heir of the Wild, switches from defense to offense very, very easily. In this deck, it is incredibly easy to fulfill that Formidable cost, you know, 8 power on the board, basically. He's been much better than he looks. Very unassuming little dude, but he's usually swinging by the 3rd, 4th turn, you know. The guy has been very good for me, at least. Try him out, because he looks weird, he looks weak, you know, and half people won't even know what this card is, you know. You just forget about something like Gladewatcher pretty easily, but the card has been very, very good in the deck. To finish off the creatures here, we're going to play 2 copies of Surrak the Hunt Caller. We could play Temur Sabertooth, he's in the sideboard. We could play Whisperwood Elemental, he is also in the sideboard. I just didn't want to go too overboard on these, you know, big, high converted mana cost creatures. Because we're playing, like, you know, a deck that really wants to go low to the ground and dominate the early turns and use buffs and stuff like that. So we don't really have all the mana to be playing these huge dudes. But Surrak, I think, is worth it because 9 times out of 10, he's going to have haste. Again, especially landfall works really well with Formidable. I'll say that for the last time. You know, that'll be all I say there. And a lot of the times you drop Surrak on the 4th turn, he immediately can swing. And any creature you play after that can swing. So, you know, the next turn you play a guy, drop a land, landfall happens, swing with everything, including the guy you just played. I mean, it gets out of control very, very quickly. And honestly, a fan of the channel will know that I really like Surrak in these budget green decks. I think he's an overlooked creature a lot of the time. 4 mana for a 5-power dude that can swing the turn he hits play and can make any creature you play after him swing the turn it hits play is a very, very good deal, and I feel this card should be more expensive than it is. Definitely play the Surraks. We're going to play some buffs in our deck. You know, I've already brought that up a couple of times. Important for a Stompy deck to do this. We're going to play 4 copies of Swell of Growth, 4 copies of Titanic Growth, and then 2 copies of Become Immense in the deck. You know, this is easy, right? We've got a lot of landfall creatures. Let's play Swell of Growth. Titanic Growth is +4/+4. You know, if your Scythe Leopard gets through and you drop a land, that's 6 damage, you know, just on your smallest creature. And then Become Immense is just crazy. You know, we're going to be dropping not only these buff spells into the graveyard early, we've got a land that goes to the graveyard through its activation, and, you know, a lot of our creatures will die either to spot removal in the early game, or they may die to, you know, just combat situations. So the delve on this will be very, very easy to get. And just when one guy goes unblocked, you can easily win the game off of Become Immense, so yes. And we could play Might of the Masses. It is in the board against decks that we want to go way underneath, like, you know, Ulamog ramp decks and some control variants. We want to go way underneath those, but I don't think it needs to be in the main deck, Might of the Masses. I think this is what we need to do right here. 24 lands in the deck. Hey, there's the land I was talking about. Blighted Woodland's really, really good, by the way, you know. Later on in the game, you drop the Woodland and you pop it on the same turn. That is 3 landfall triggers, which can win you the game, to be honest with you. That's absolutely crazy. So yeah, I want to play all the Blighted Woodlands. I think it's a pretty good, like, 5-drop. Here's our board right here. I think a lot of this is self-explanatory. The board has gone through an awful lot of changes since I first started the deck. You know, Ainok Survivalist, I think it's self-explanatory. Retreat to Kazandu is good against mid-range and aggro decks. You know, mid-range, we can avoid board stall situations by making our guys bigger, and then aggro decks, opposing aggro decks, we can win the long game against by gaining some life. That's important. Aerial Volley is good against Mana Strider and Hangerback Walker tokens. I think it's a good card. Just play of Dominance is obvious, you know, especially against Jace. That's important. Temur Sabertooth reduced from spot removal and mass removal. Whisperwood Elemental, again, spot removal and mass removal, especially mass removal. Very, very good against that, and a big creature. And then Might of the Masses I've also explained. So, pretty cut and dried sideboard. I would maybe like to play, like, Plummet in there somewhere, but Aerial Volley gets the job done. And here are our power rankings. A final score of 54, which is pretty good for, you know, this level of deck. Only going to cost you a few bucks to make, you know. Stompy doesn't have everything going for it in this format, but it does have some unique stuff. Really, really like the interaction between Landfall and Formidable, those 2 mechanics, and we've got a lot of good creatures that do both of those things, you know. This is just like a lot of all-in decks, you know, it's all or nothing. The stats that it looks like it's bad in, it really doesn't care about being bad in, so don't take the final score of 54 as like this deck is bad. The things that it does well, it does pretty darn well, but the things it doesn't care about doing, it doesn't do well at all, obviously. That's all I got for now. What are we doing next time? Colastria Healer combo is still a thing. I want to do either, I've changed it to either budget blue control, which I think is definitely doable, or budget Dimir blue-black control. Let me know. They're both going to be, under 20 bucks. Let me know which one you'd rather see. And what I might do the next time, is this mono red, mid-range control deck I've been working on. I think that's a good deck. If you enjoyed the content, just do us a favor, hit thumbs up. It helps out an awful lot. You had no idea how much that helps out. And then comment, let us know how you felt about this one, if you're going to play it, how well you did, how much you hate it, what we could have played it 2-drop instead. There's a lot of different things I want to know about as far as this deck is concerned. I've been working on it for a while, and it impressed me more than I thought it would. I'm Dev from SBMTG, as usual. Thanks for watching. Seriously, thanks for watching, my wizards.